Hey, everybody, thanks for watching. Hit the bell, subscribe. We have new content coming out daily. Make sure you subscribe. God bless you guys. In the last couple of years, we've seen this advance of the green energy agenda on oil and gas. Kind of give us a grade of the health of the oil and gas industry from a regulatory perspective, a legislative perspective. Where do we stand as of today?
So right now, the industry we are actually at pre-pandemic levels. Thankfully, a lot of that has to do because of the prior administration. Under President Trump, he made it very clear that he was going to use the federal asset in terms of oil and gas and fossil fuels. He was going to be able to use that. The reason why is because we're one of the largest contributors to the federal budget besides the income tax. And so we're now producing 12 billion barrels a day. But the administration says, well, and the president has said, is we're going to reduce that federal production to zero. If you do that, Charlie, that creates a market gap of almost 1 million barrels a day, which puts us right back to where we were last year at this time. Again, 25% of all the oil and gas assets in the United States are onshore. We account for about 10% of the overall production. If the administration says we're taking it away, then they create this market gap, which pushes our prices back up to $125, $130 a barrel, and paying $5 a barrel for gas. The way they do that is they control it through the very complex permitting process and the number of leases that can be nominated and accepted. Again, in my 30 years working in this industry in Washington, D.C., I've never seen a more unfavorable regulatory or legislative environment than the one we've gone through for the last 2 years.
But can you explain that further? I mean, but if production has increased, why are gas prices so high?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why production has increased is when we go in and we drill a well, we sometimes we don't always complete that at the same time, and so those wells can and it's called drilled but uncompleted. And what happened was, if you recall, pre-COVID, the Saudis and the Russians took it to the U.S. shale producers. They said, we're going to drive you out of business. And so they started cutting prices and cutting prices and cutting prices, which meant the U.S. shale producers had to drill more and more wells. And then COVID hit and demand collapse took place. And what we had was thousands and thousands of wells that were already drilled but weren't completed. And then the administration changed. And what happened is, when the Biden administration came and said, we're not going to do any more leases, well, those wells began to be completed. So you see that those production levels are now because of the drilling work that we did during the Trump administration. The problem is the Saudis, as you know, went through this million barrel a day cut globally. And so they have put the squeeze on global prices while the U.S. producers are not in the position to be what's called a swing producer anymore. We're producing as much oil and gas as we can, but we can't keep up with the Saudi cut, unfortunately.
But if you can't keep up with the cut, then the raising of prices is not a supply issue then.
It is. Again, this gets into the complexity of how do you for gasoline prices and diesel prices. It goes back to the complexity of what type of oil we're producing in the United States versus globally. In Texas, we produce, the West Texas Intermediate, what's called a light crude. We import the heavy crude. The heavy crude has more sulfur content, and that's what our refineries for decades have been refining, because that was the way we were importing oil and refining it that way. So we're actually exporting the oil that we're producing here to the refineries in Europe and elsewhere who like that crude, where we have to bring it in. And so we're still subject, unfortunately, to the global prices because we have to import Saudi and Venezuelan crude right now.
So from a legislative perspective, they are talking about abolishing fossil fuels and transitioning us to a green economy. We're seeing whispers of this in New York, for example, where they've completely eliminated almost all fracking. What would that mean for the American economy?
Well, the fact of the matter is they cannot get from here to there. We don't have the infrastructure in place. If we went to full electrification, we simply don't have the generation capacity without a base load that natural gas provides. And this is what's so frustrating to us, is because 60% of the greenhouse gas emissions that have taken place, the United States has led the world in doing that. And that has taken place because we have switched from coal to natural gas. We can't get from here to there. I mean, I have an electric vehicle. I mean, I bought it because I wanted to be able to complain about it, and I got a lot of complaints. The fact is, the biggest matter is that there is not the infrastructure for me to go outside my hometown and go on a longer trip to say, we had to go to Salt Lake for example, this weekend, and we didn't drive it because we didn't know if there was going to be a charger available for us to come back. We're just not there, and that they're selling us a bill of goods, to be honest with you.
So is there a website you could direct our audience to for more information, something that if they wanted to dive deeper into this?
Yeah, on the appliance side, the natural gas, the ceiling fans and stoves, handsoffmystove.com is a little side project that the U.S. Oil and Gas Association started. We did that to kind of help people, and it's a volunteer organization, to help people stay on top of what was happening in their state or in their town, and to give them the top 2 or 3 things that are happening each week on the appliance side. And on the just general oil and gas side, there's a lot of different websites, the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, usoga.org, API.org. A lot of those other trade associations have we have some excellent information. The problem is, Charlie, that we've got great information and we're really lousy at getting our message across a lot of times. And I will be the first to admit that that's our problem.
Well, we need to start to get the truth out, because this is civilizational type stuff that's happening here. The entire civilization comes down to whether or not you have energy. It's very basic. If you cannot fuel your economy, if you cannot fuel your life, so much of Western prosperity is built on the prerequisite of abundant, cheap energy. It's just we take it so for granted. And
it's what separates us from first world versus third world.